Hello there and welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the roundtable discussions. There were some very interesting conversations going on. I myself was on the industrial partnerships session, and we're delighted that you're back with us. I'm now going to go over to our final keynote of the day, Dr. Dawn Cairns, Professional Research Fellow at the University College of Osteopath and Chair of the Council for Allied Health Professions in Research, who will discuss how the Council is working to change the UK healthcare system structure and culture to transform future pathways for non-medical researchers. Hi, Dawn. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the welcome and inviting us.
I will hand over to you to share your screen and give your presentation.
Thank you. Costas, if you could just nod and let me know you can see my screen.
Put me on. Yes, I can definitely hear you and
Great.
see you.
Okay. I will start then. Okay, thank you very much. So it's nice to be invited here. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Council for Allied Health Professions in Research, often called CAPA for short. So if you wonder why I'm using the term CAPA, it actually stands for Council for Allied Health Professions in Research. But I know it's an odd name. You can find us online. We're hosted by the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. And of course, we're on Twitter as well. So what are we all about? Well, I just need to flip forward. We are a body that was set up to help work towards influencing UK health system research policy and culture. So really to start thinking about how we are going to help transform future pathways and future opportunities for allied health professionals in research. And the reason why we're doing this is because we felt there was a good deal of improvement to be made. So for this particular presentation, I am going to introduce you a little bit to CAPA. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the research and innovation strategy for England that's currently being promoted and implemented. I'm going to talk about some of the acknowledged challenges that we face, some of our strategic responses that we hope to do, and how we're going to hopefully demonstrate value and impact. So this is the core team at CAPA. There's myself, Kate Grafton and Richard Collins, who are the vice chairs of CAPA. And then we've got Matt Liston, who's our coordinator between CAPA and the Chartered Society of Physiotherapists. And then we have Harriet Shannon and Ruth Strudwick, who are the hub leads. So I'll talk a little bit more about the hubs in the next few slides. So CAPA consists of the professional bodies representing allied health professions. So these are our stakeholders, but they also fund us. So what happens is each professional body puts a whole load of money into a pot every year, and that funds CAPA. Now, when I say it funds CAPA, it funds some administrative support, and it funds some small budgets that go out to our hubs that then are used for different purposes, such as funding travel expenses, well, of old to conferences or conference fees, or little seed corn budgets to help people write grant applications or do some protocol development, that kind of thing. So we fund ourselves in that respect, but the rest of us are all volunteers, as in research. You know, you do a lot of your work voluntarily, just to promote and try and increase the opportunities available. So this is our hub network. You can see all over the country, we have different regional hubs, and these are open to any allied health professionals who are interested in research. So quite often, if you're just at that curious stage, you can join a hub. And in the hub, there are people who are all stages of their career pathways, which is great, because what it can do is it can increase your networking, your reach, and it can help you find advice and guidance about where to go. But again, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. So the Council for Allied Health Professions has the strategic committee, which is all the professional bodies are represented by normally a research representative from the professional body. And we all get together about 3 or 4 times a year to discuss our strategic direction and where we want to go. We've then got our research hubs. We also have a professoriate, which is where we try and bring together most of the professors who are working in the allied health professions. So these are professors who are often working on NIHR grants, they have their own portfolios of research, and this helps us network a little bit and find out about what's going on and what opportunities there are available for allied health professionals. We also have our research champions, and these are funded by the National Institute for Health Research. I think there are around about 12 champions at the moment, and the champions exist to try and increase that link between the NHS and academia, and we're developing those roles to a larger extent over the next year. So a little bit more about the hubs. As I said, the hubs are open to all allied health professionals looking to get more involved in research. So if you join a hub, and you find out about the hubs on our website, and the address is just at the top of this slide, the hub's there to provide advice, they're there to provide support to you, and also to encourage networking. And the hubs will probably get together once a month. Some are once every 2 months, but normally about once a month. And people will come together, and they will also provide some signposting or direction for training opportunities, research placement opportunities. There's also mentoring and leadership schemes that they will be able to direct you to. So slightly different to, for example, the research design service. This really is sort of like local networking, local knowledge, but hopefully within the context of a national framework. And of course, these hubs also have a little bit of funds that you can often apply for, which might help you in your research journey. We also work very closely with the National Institute for Health and Care Research and also Health Education England. We work with the Chief Allied Health Officers in all the devolved nations, and also with the Council of Deans for Health. And we are looking to increase our reach and increase our presence in other areas as well. So, what's our strategy? Well, our strategy is very much aligned with the Health Education England strategy for allied health professions in research innovation that was launched in January of this year, 2022. Now, CAPA were very involved with the design and the development, and also now with the implementation of this strategy. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this AHP research and innovation strategy now. So Dr. Hazel Rodham, she's been employed by the HEE to help develop and implement the strategy. So if you have any questions specifically about the strategy, you can contact her. But you can also go to the website as well, which is the next slide. But this slide is more to show you just how many people were involved, how many organizations were involved in the development of this research and innovation strategy. You can see here down the bottom, the College of Operating Department Practitioners have also been involved in the development of this strategy, as well as all the other allied health professions. So this is the website. If you find out more details about the strategy, you can go onto this website and the whole document for you to read. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a snapshot and a snippet of the strategy. So the reason why the strategy was developed and why I'm critical is because we felt there was a need to accelerate the pace, stability, and stability of allied health professions in terms of research and innovation. We felt there was a need to align ourselves with strategic vendors. A lot of the professional bodies had their own strategies they were all quite disparate and different. So we really wanted to come together to see how to align ourselves with and the national agenda for ourselves, but also the healthcare community, and see how all our different strategies could come together under one that links in to the other important national orders. And also we wanted to define a position for ourselves that encompassed existing collective AHP strategy support initiatives, which is kind of how we came to the one strategy that links with the others. So the strategy applies to the whole of the AHP workforce community. So that means all job roles and all career stages. So it's not just who are registered with the HCPC as practitioners, but also educators, research managers, policy leads, and associated stakeholders. Now, in this instance, we define research and innovation as something that reaches all across the spectrum of quality improvement approaches for excellence, and hopefully that things that we can evaluate and measure quality and impact in the future. So there's strategic vision statements that form part of this strategy. The first is the transformation of AHPs, identities, cultures, and roles to encompass more research. The second is about the delivery in evidence-based AHP practice. And the third one is about the national strategic research agendas and priorities to make sure they are explicitly, not implicitly, but explicitly inclusive of allied health research. So the reason why is that traditionally there has been a gap between research and practice, and we want to sort of like close that gap. And we wanted to close that gap because we realize the benefits of both researchers and clinical practice, and bringing them together to ensure that the highest quality of evidence can be used in practice, that of course translates into better patient care. And of course, any strategy with anything, there's challenges, and these are some of our acknowledged challenges that we're facing here. So the first one is about career pathways. To think about how career pathways can be developed and how we can bring in the academic and the together. We're really starting to look at supporting, mentoring, and sustain that process in the future. Also looking at substantive appointments. Merchants work from contracts to contracts to contracts is a very unstable, insecure environment to work with. So we're looking at more substantive appointments. We're looking at equality of access to opportunities for allied health professionals, and we're looking really trying to improve collaboration of working with clinical services. So even in CAPA, it's to have clinical managers and service users on the CAPA board to help us and reduce the levels of separation so we become more collaborative. And successful joint appointments, this is more clinical academic. And also we're trying to understand challenges are between research and research in teaching and research in, and how we can start to break down the barriers perhaps between some of them, how you integrate more. And of course, there's still a lot of work about visibility and prestige in the allied health professions world, and of course funding and investment. And this is something at a level that CAPA is certainly working on to influence. Now I'm just going to highlight this particular bit of research because we do realise, as with any strategy, it's how do you the impact of your strategy. Well, here we're going to use this piece of work by Lee Jones, Joe Cook and Judith Holliday. And we're going to start looking at the service and workforce changes that might take place as a result of this strategy. To look at research profiles and capacities, especially from the NIHR and funding. We're also going to look at economic benefits, organizational influence, and production and knowledge exchange. So these are some of the areas that we're going to be measuring against in the future. Now, start doing this. Well, there are a few key areas that we are going to be looking at, and that's visibility and reputation, looking at effective networks and communities. We're really going to look at, as an organization, how we can start supporting existing leadership programs and mentorship programs. We can support those people running these programs more as an organization from into them. Our research champions are ambassadors for both clinical work and research, and we're trying to see how we can mold our champions more into the national strategic framework, and of course other work to do in terms of our reach, our network, and influence. So within the Council for Allied Health Professions, we have 3 projects that we're focusing on in 2022. We have a project looking at communication strategy and the implementation of that communication strategy. Even in the round table that we were having earlier, it was like, how do you know about opportunities? How do you get to position yourself if you're curious about research and you want to move into that research? So it's really thinking about how we can communicate opportunities to allied professions so they can take up some of the opportunities that are often lost in the ether. We've got a big project this year looking at equity, diversity and inclusion, and also the wider research community. So when we talk about equity inclusion, we're not just talking about in this context people with characteristics, but we're talking about equity between the professions and for the profession, making sure that some of the smaller professions still have access to the opportunity some of the bigger professions have. And we're also looking at equality between nations, so not just the UK, the England, but Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales as well. And the final research project that we're focusing on is research and research opportunities. And this is when we'll be working with the Council for Deans and their research placement opportunities, the NIHR and their principal investigator scheme, and supporting our professional bodies who are part of leadership and mentoring programs as well. So that's where we are with the Allied Health Professions research. ODPs out there, please do join us, join our hubs, go on our. We're delighted to welcome you with open arms. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Do we have time for questions in the chat?
There won't be any questions directly on the stage, but any questions will get directed to you and introduce you to anybody that wanted to connect with you. But thank you so much for that that keynote. It was fantastic, and this session is recorded, so it will be distributed immediately after and distributed on social media in the coming weeks. So thank you so much, Dawn, for all your help here.
My pleasure.
Oh. Sorry, we accidentally cut Dawn off there, but thanks so much, Dawn, for joining us. We're now going to go on to the final part of the event, which is really summarizing the insights and solutions that have come out of the roundtable discussions. So we're going to bring on the chairs for the sessions, and that will include Martin Birchall, David Jane, who is in PhD Clinic, Helen Waltall, Dina, and we should have Nick, and I believe we should have Josh joining us. But we'll carry on because we do have Helen with us. So thanks everybody. Did you all find the event useful so far? Fantastic. Well, we've had some great feedback on the chat and on emails. So really, this is now an opportunity to give a summary to your session, share any insights that were discussed and any solutions. So Martin, should we kick off with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've actually got a couple of slides. I was, of course, intently listening to Dawn as well, who was brilliant, but she was in our session as well. Thanks very much. So this is the Finding Supervision Roundtable, and there was myself, Dawn Carnes, who you've just heard from, who has been a supervisee herself, but also supervised, and has thought a lot about how supervision can be best delivered to non-medical members of the health community. There's myself, and I've supervised a number of people over the years. As you can see, I'm particularly aged, so that is extensive. And Amy Bradburn, who is a very dynamic young ODP from the Newcastle area, who has developed up her own ideas for PhD and looking for supervision. And we had other attendees from various backgrounds, including one from Hong Kong that joined us. So Amy, she had a pathway where she has done training, degree, and masters, and had some basic research training and degree and masters, developed her own thesis proposal, and has now got some partnership with the local university. She pointed out that research is one of the 4 pillars of an advanced practitioner role, but it's the poorest supported by the system. In ODP particularly, there are multiple professional bodies who don't always communicate and don't seem to communicate much at all about research. And really it's down to chance and serendipity whether or not a non-medical member of the theatre team actually finds a supervisor or not. There's huge problems with lack of study leave, and the reason why this is important in terms of supervision is if you can't get away to network, if you can't get to meetings and conferences where potential supervisors might be, you're much less chance of meeting somebody. And a lack of staff means that there's a reluctance to reduce patient care, to give time for research, to get away to these things, and to actually find a supervisor in the first place. Dawn pointed out that some doctorate opportunities are advertised, so theatre nurses and ODPs and others could apply for these, but they're highly competitive and very few. And if you do get one of these, your supervisory package comes with the package. So then it's less of an issue, but there aren't many of them. So many other people have to find local and national support. So she urges people to look at local research networks and some existing national hubs where people can look to try and gain advice and look for supervision. CAPRA have one themselves, as she's just defined, and also CARIN, which is the Council of Deans Clinical Academic Roles Implementation Network, and there are websites for these. There's also NIHR schemes and a 6-month associate PI scheme, which is very good, which allows people to join others, to apply to join others' existing research programs, and learn about the way that's functioning. From the medical point of view, generally surgeons have more availability and choice than the non-medical teams, but there are issues with choosing the right supervisors nonetheless. You may be forced into a kind of Hobson's choice, but if you do have a choice, then you do need to think about what qualities you want from your supervisor. And there is a lack of QC. So once you're being supervised, I'm sure we've heard from Josh and others about the QC that they're looking to implement around research training, but actually around the supervision itself, some basic QC could be required. So our proposals were better promotion of hubs where you can get this kind of information, CAPRA, CARIN and local, and possibly bringing together the different regulatory bodies and professional bodies are involved in the theatre teams to come together to provide a common platform for signposting. Also, we need to flag up with HEE and the NHS regularly the need for protected time and funding for education, secondments and courses for non-medical team members. And we should probably start thinking about a basic QC system for people who are supervising medics as well.
Thanks so much for that insight, Martin. I don't know, David, if you wanted to add any thoughts on that, even though you weren't in that roundtable.
And not really. I think Martin articulates very well the difficulties and challenges. And your point taken, Martin, that this is all about advertising and getting it out and showing people the opportunities, which is the rationale for the incubator.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that summary and insight, Martin. If we now go over to Helen, are you okay to go next?
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you, Costa. So as we haven't done slides because we have just literally come out of our session. So what I'm just going to do is to feedback how the discussion went. So we had 5 really key points that we thought were key for someone as they're thinking of exiting their thesis. That was the title of our session. So really what the first thing was is you need to start during your doctorate. And don't leave it to the last minute, and to really think through what you want to do in the postdoc realm. So do you want to carry on a clinical academic pathway? Do you want to do that within an NHS trust? Do you want to do that within a university? Are you within your training still? And so all of that has an impact. Therefore, you need to start thinking what you want to do prior to finishing. So no early is early enough. And so if that's in your first, second year, I would not leave it. We decided in the group to at least the 3rd year of a full-time doctorate. The other thing that we identified was really key was mentorship, and that mentorship is often seen as a side when you're going into exiting the PhD, that it's there. But actually what you need to do is really marry with someone that is a like-minded person to you, not only from a research perspective and a career perspective, but equally as on a personal level. And mentorship in the exiting the thesis, don't feel that you need to always align with your supervisors. It may well be that they've done their role and you've exited your thesis, you've got your viva and you've passed your PhD, and that's their role done, and you don't want to carry on that relationship. That's fine. But you need to find someone that will have your back, so to speak, in the mentorship period initially after you've finished your doctorate. The other thing that we had a really big discussion about was how you develop in that postdoc period. And most of the literature in the evidence will tell you that actually that's where most people drop off the pathway. So they are successful pre-doctoral, getting funding, get a CDRF or an academic clinical fellowship, get funding, and then they stop. And the reason they stop is the postdoc funding period is really difficult. And so we had really good discussion about what people should do. And so really in the NHS, as Martin clearly identified, if you're a non-medic and you do advanced practice research is a pillar and is seen as not one of the priorities, you need to shape out funding to enable you to do research. And those funding opportunities can be through personal fellowships, but equally through grants where you can buy your time out. So we have big discussions about, do you go down NIHR, BRC, BHF, MRC, or Wellcome personal fellowships? And if you're not successful there, look at small pots of money that build up your reputation as being someone that is achievable in grant applications. We also discussed about how to link in with things like the research design service with the NIHR, because they will help you. They're an independent person. They will look at you and be able to give you insight of what parts of an application you may be missing on, whether you need to have more PPI or you need to do a systematic review before you apply. So it's enabling you to build up where you're at in the system. They have a huge amount of experience of seeing people within the system and giving them feedback. And then also think through very early, as you're coming out of your doctoral journey, where you want your career to go. And is that as a clinical academic? And is that within the trust as a host, or is that within a university as a host? And where you want to go. So think where your end journey is and how you potentially are going to get there. So back step to enable you to think where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And then the last point we all discussed was about collaboration and how key collaboration is. Researchers don't achieve research on their own. They need to do as a collaborative adventure. And even during a doctoral program, you're still the person that should be emailing the collaborative colleagues that you want to work with. Don't just think I'm too junior, I can't collaborate. So embrace collaboration, embrace positive mentorship, and think about where you want your journey to go from the early postdoc period right through. I think that's it. Thank you, Costa.
Fantastic. Does anybody want to add any thoughts to that? No? Okay. So we'll go on to Nick. If you want to take yourself off mute and share your insights.
Thanks, Costa. So we came up with 3 action points. The first one really centered around the fact that the split between your clinical work and your academic work is very much an individual choice. And I think it's important to maintain that flexibility in the funding opportunities, so you can really build in what really fits for you in terms of your career moving forward. And we sort of said that the dream funding opportunity would really be where you could specify how much clinical work or how little clinical work you wanted to do in the context of your job plan. So that was really number one, is just maintaining that flexibility in how people can work in the clinical academic space. Secondly, we had quite a good discussion about intellectual property and how that links in with the research that we do. And amongst us, it was no one could really come up with a resource that was available where it was a sort of easy read for clinical academics to understand the role of IP in the research that we do. And we thought perhaps the NIHR could put together a document that would outline the information on that. And lastly, slightly linked to that earlier point, it was really about how industry can play a role in the research that we do. So a lot of the established funding opportunities are quite well defined on the websites, but the role of industry is perhaps less well defined, although that is changing with sort of more recent awards that have become available, and obviously events like today's certainly help with that process. So those were our 3 action points that we came up with.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing those. Dina, would you like to share your thoughts and a summary?
Great, thanks, Costas. So it's really interesting to hear what everybody else has echoed, and I think that mentorship really captured a lot of those points. So we talked about actually understanding what mentorship is and what your mentorship needs are. And actually what came across was that clinicians are probably better at identifying their mentorship needs and identifying how to gain a mentor than some of our allied healthcare professionals. We talked about the need of empowering people to develop their mentors and aligning that with what their mentorship needs are at each level of their research career, whether that's pre-doctoral or post-doctoral, and making sure that mentorship is seamlessly integrated into your research and academic pathway and portfolio. And I think we talked a lot about how many mentorship relationships are organic, and matching them is one way of giving people an opportunity to create a mentorship network. However, it's really important to empower people and give them the skills to be able to create their own organic networks of mentorship and beyond. And I think finally what we talked about was that making sure that that mentorship group, particularly in the surgical tech and medtech arena, is as broad and diverse and collaborative as it possibly can be, because you don't just require mentors in academia, in surgery, but also more widely within medtech and with regards to industry and investment. So we sort of feel that you need seamless mentorship, agile mentorship, and broad, diverse mentorship. And I hope that the Advanced Surgical Incubator Mentorship Programme will address some of those.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Did anybody want to give any thoughts on everybody else's session so far? David or Martin?
Just on Dean, I mean, Dean has put a lot of thought into this historically, and it sounds like a very productive session. It's just kind of juggling a diverse group of mentors. I mean, I think the principle's a wonderful one. You do kind of need different skills from the mentor for different parts of your clinical academic role.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's what came through. It's about understanding that one mentor doesn't serve all purposes, and about how that mentorship model might change. So you might pick and choose, you know, to interact with different mentors at different times. And they don't necessarily have to have one mentor that's all encompassing. Probably need a range of mentors at a different stage of your career. And it's about how you bring those mentors to the forefront, and then, you know, and interact with them, and then bring new mentors in as you need them, and sort of let existing mentors know that perhaps you don't need them as much as you did before. And it's a process of growth. And I think your mentorship model and your mentorship package needs to reflect that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, super.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight. David, did you want to add anything, or?
Yeah, no, I'd just say that I think the quality of mentorship can actually vary considerably, and so be careful who you choose. And it's not necessarily the most eminent or the most knowledgeable who's going to be the most beneficial to you. And I would recommend NIHR actually do a fabulous mentors training program. So if you join their Mentors Academy, I was amazed at the number of training opportunities available. So anyone aspiring to be mentors, I would highly recommend that, really.
I think you're absolutely right, David, and it certainly came across in our discussions. And I think it's important that we support mentors as well, because often it's the most approachable person that gets asked to mentor a range of people, and they may not have the capacity to be able to do that. And so we talked a lot about how mentors require support, but also how mentors develop, and of course NIHR is addressing that.
Yeah, I think you raised some very interesting points there. I did my master's in electronic healthcare record interoperability at Warwick Business School, and we had a mentoring program, and it was all about matching people with the right mentor that's been on a similar stream of research, and also has got experience in industry as well. And it's getting that right match and gel between the two personalities and the experiences of experience and inexperience and so on. So I think it's a very important session that you've discussed there. I just go into my part now. So I was on the Industrial Partnerships Roundtable, which was chaired by Vima Punde, Program Director of the NIHR Surgical MedTech Co-operative, who had to go off. So I said I'd jump in, and basically we had Mark Slapp from CMR Surgical, we had Matt from Proximy, and myself. And this roundtable really discussed the interface between the surgical medtech industry and how theatre teams could be improved, looking at specific reference points for two-way support, for placements, joint funding, and just other ways of working. And what really came out of it is it's really important to involve all stakeholders at every stage to give a real insight into not just your role, but everybody's perspectives. You've got a nurse who's got one perspective, an ODP has got another perspective, a doctor that's got another perspective, and it's bringing those perspectives and appreciating that and giving opinions, but also bringing on board the patient's perspective, because it's in a partnership or in an innovation adoption, for example, or another outcome. It's about them using being being the end user and getting their insight. And that's why NIHR does a lot of PPI, ensuring that there are different patient groups involved. And what also came out is that for any adoption of whether it's innovation or whether it's a partnership, it's very important to take both a top-down approach from senior management, but also a bottom-up approach, so that you get that internal buy-in between the different stakeholders, because the two will inevitably come together, and then everybody can sing off the same hymn sheet and go forward together. And V picked up on another important point about workforce pressures, and these have really changed since the pandemic. Things that were difficult at that point, but have calmed down recently. And looking at the role of innovation within there, and the role that innovation can play in supporting everybody to have a voice. Matt from Proximy said that everyone's learned different ways of working, and in particular in Proximy's platform, in his opinion, it's enabled them to have surgeons in the room through telementoring and giving everyone a presence. And my point to that was that I see a lot of medtech SMEs. ImproveWell was one that I referenced, that is doing great work in the NHS to support internal engagement and giving everyone that voice. But what I mentioned is that you can have all the technology in the world, but the cultural shift is very important to ensure that people are adopting that, because there's no point having this technology if people aren't using it. So it's very important to have that in. And Mark from CMR Surgical suggested that it's important to have lots of different avenues for collaboration between academia and industry, to bring down the barriers, to lower suspicion of each other. And we just discussed how it's very important that everybody's very clear about their interests and what they're trying to get out of something, so they can really look at forming a partnership that works for both sides, that expectations are managed but also achieved, to also address the overall goal of addressing unmet needs within the NHS, for example. And Mark mentioned that CMR Surgical is doing a lot of great work, and all of their work is peer reviewed and published. So academia should look and actually see that the industry can work on the same principles and methodologies and standards as is taking place in your sector. Matt said, from Proximy, that partnering with research associates to research ethnography had been very useful. Proximy can now look at the context of theatre and the flow of teams and how they're operating cohesively through the technology. And we kind of rounded off by talking about networks and how actually industry and academia can work together. Because Matt from Proximy referenced that in some cases, it all comes down to knowing somebody and having that connection, whether you're on one side of the fence or the other. I mentioned that you've got great networks like the NIHR. You also have academic health science networks that are there to facilitate collaboration. But from the outside in, for many SMEs, I can imagine that they don't know about these networks and know how they can work with academia. So more awareness is required. And in particular, Martin and David, you might find this interesting, that Mark said from CMR Surgical that the incubator has actually been very useful. It's introduced him to new thoughts and processes in clinical areas that wouldn't have, for people he wouldn't have met before, and got him access to greater infrastructure. So he said that incubators are very much needed. And in summary, from a solutions perspective, we said that kind of the same thing that's coming out of the other sessions, getting that internal buy-in, engaging all stakeholders, being transparent about everybody's needs, getting that right match to create that right partnership, and coming to events like this that bring people together, And we also, what everybody will notice after the event and up to 2 or 3 weeks after the event, is that we, Empact Ventures, are making an active role to connect you with the right people via email. So you'll start to get Gemma introducing you to people for potential partnerships, research collaborations, and so on. So going to events are very useful, and working out what you can leverage from a partnership to benefit both sides is actually important. So yeah, so that was the discussion of what we discussed. Does anybody want to add anything to that, or throw in any other comments from what anybody else said?
I was just wondering what really came out as the main barriers that have traditionally been there for linking up academics with industry. I mean, there's certainly some great solutions now coming on which are going to help with that. But I mean, what do you think the main barriers were, or still are?
Who's the question directed to?
Sorry, to Costa.
The main barrier, I think the barriers, they range depending on the stakeholders involved. If you're on the outside in, if you're in industry, the barrier is knowing who to go to and who can get you to that right collaboration. So if you're looking to do an Innovate UK bid, for example, it's knowing, can I do a joint bid with a university? If so, who is that university? Do they have the expertise? Do they have a research associate that could take forward some of the research once the bid is accepted? But equally, there's barriers on the other end as well, where students, for example, don't know the opportunities that there are to get involved at the postgraduate level. You know, KTPs are a way to bring industry together. So the barriers really come around communication and awareness of what's out there, who can offer what everybody's interests are, what avenues to go down, and how to work together. I don't know if Martin or David want to answer that question as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're spot on. And there is, I don't know how much it's still an issue, but there's been a big cultural skepticism about medtech industry, and if, industry in general. It's particularly strong in the physicianly specialties rather than the surgical ones, I suspect. But nonetheless, that any approach from industry is because they are primarily wanting to make money, and of course money is important, and not asking the question, how can this approach actually push the field forward for patient benefit, which is the right question to ask.
Excellent. David, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I can do. It will steal my thunder from the next session, but I might as well speak about it now. So in our session, we did touch on industry PhDs, and one of the participants in our group was sort of industry orientated and had done a basic science biomedical PhD, and industry PhDs are much more common in those biomedical basic science disciplines. So we felt there was some learning that could be done there. How is it that the basic scientists are able to do it and we struggle so much in clinical medicine? There was a recognition that industry is a different beast. It's a different environment. They have different priorities. They have different timelines. So it needs adaptation on both sides. And the other point that came up, which is often very, very tricky, is that of IP. Obviously, if you're doing a PhD, you want to publish, and that may not be in the company's best interest. So it could really impact on your PhD, and it's something you'd have to get clarity on right from the start.
Fantastic. Thanks for that insight. Well, I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for joining us, for summarizing these sessions, and all of our speakers, our keynotes, our roundtable discussion panelists, and all attendees for joining us. So we're going to let Our speakers here leave, and we'll keep David and Martin here to close us off for the event. So thank you, Nick, Dina, and Helen, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
So David and Martin, we're at the end. How did you think it went today?
David?
Brilliant. Loved it. Loved every minute of it. We had really fantastic keynote speakers. They're right on message. I learned an awful lot listening from them. I've got a pile of notes, and I'm going to go away and buy fantastic plastic and read up on it. So thoroughly enjoyed that. Thoroughly enjoyed the talks around the different aspects. All again, right on message. Big thank you to you, Costa, Gemma, and the team. As always, we've worked with you several times before. Really smooth. What people don't see is all the hard preparation, the weeks of toil that go on to make these things happen. So a big thank you to you.
Thank you ever so much. We really appreciate that. And I think there were some fantastic talks and sessions, particularly in the MedTech showcase. We're listening to Proximy and CanSense, ArsMed, Medisiv, and QV Bioelectronics that have really been on that journey, have been in academia, have commercialized their research, have learned new entrepreneurial skills, even as doctors and in different clinical courses and so on, but also developed their teams and brought on the right people and still building their cultures right in. What did you think, Martin?
I am really, really happy with the way everything's gone. As David says, everybody was bang on message, and we've been going with the incubator for over a year, a lot more longer than that, actually, nearly 2 years now. And I think we've gained more from today than we've gained in numerous months of discussions and email exchanges. This kind of dynamic input from the right, bright people is exactly what we needed. And I think it's given us focus and will lead to some meaningful outputs that will help surgical researchers to develop themselves for patient benefit.
And hopefully we can do it annually, because I think it's very much needed. And I know we're already looking at what we might do next year and so on. So I think everybody's got some great benefit out of this.
Well, I hope those in Power at NIHR are listening, because I know that they haven't made a decision on whether the incubators will all be funded beyond next year, but we sincerely hope so, and hope that we've demonstrated some worth.
Hopefully, yes. And from a point from our session was what V said is that funding is needed, but Mark was saying how funding distribution is also needed. And I mentioned that bringing that together with networks as well and infrastructure that the incubator is providing. Clearly, a great company like CMR Surgical is benefiting from the incubator, and thinks that more incubators are required. So hopefully may that continue. So thank you so much to both Martin and David. They've been working with us day and night. We've been exchanging emails at 11 o'clock at night, and even on the bank holiday weekend, all working away together to get this ready for you all. So for the rest of the event that is staying open, the replay section will now appear at the side of your screen, and this will enable you to replay any of the sessions that you might have missed. So if you jumped into one roundtable but you weren't able to see the other, you can watch them. Equally, we've set up so Hopin will email you and give you a direct link to come back and watch all of these sessions at your convenience, and they'll be available for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And after that, we will edit them. We will put them on the web page and on social media in different snippets so that you can play them back. The other thing to mention is that the expo will stay open. So in the expo area, if you want to connect with Martin or David, please go to the Incubator Expo booth, or to go to the Surgical MedTech Co-operative booth and select the Super Connect Me button. But there's also booths in there for Health Tech World, Proximy, and Empact Ventures I'll be in there if anybody wants to have a chat on video. And also finally, the networking area is live as well. So you can jump into that and you can have short 3-minute one-to-one sessions with other attendees. But I know we've also enabled the people's area through people section throughout this event. So you've been able to message people and so on. So yes, as I mentioned, we will be making super connections, as we call them, to potential partners and collaborators and funders. And the last thing I'll say is that if anybody's interested in clinical trials, because I know that came up with some of the MedTech showcase, we're working with NIHR Surgical MedTech and the University of Portsmouth, supporting innovation and growth in healthcare technologies. And we're doing a mastering clinical trials in MedTech course running from the 13th of September over 4 sessions. So if you'd like to join that, please either look at the expo booth for that or look at our website, and we'll definitely send invites out for that. But thank you so much, David and Martin, and thank you to everyone. Take care.